Hey guys, it's Kinpatsu Cosplay here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you guys how to cast a sword like this with really lightweight material. If you guys would like to learn more about how to make your own cosplay costumes, you can check out our website where we have tons of great cosplay tutorials and resources available. To start the casting process, you're going to need 2 large planks to put on either side of your mold to keep it together. I'm going to take the plank and lay it flat. Then I'm going to take the first half of my mold and lay it on top of the plank. Once the first half of the mold is on the board, I need to make sure it's straight. So I'm adjusting the mold and realigning it to make sure we don't have a skew cast. When the mold is straight, I'm then going to take a wooden dowel and place it in the center of the mold. This dowel will help give the casts a bit more support inside and make sure it doesn't snap. While I didn't do it for this cast, I would recommend spraying mold release into the mold before doing any casting to make sure that the mold releases the cast easily and to help protect the mold from being damaged. Now we can close up the mold and lay the other half on top. When putting the top half of the mold back into place, make sure you are lining up the keys and they are fitting into each other. If your keys don't align properly, it will distort your cast and it can cause the resin to leak out. When the top half of the mold is in place, you can take a second wooden plank and place it on top of the mold. So the mold should be sandwiched between 2 pieces of board. To secure the boards in place, I'm taking some washing line cord and tying it around the boards. I'm making sure it's tight and secure. Tying the ropes around the boards will push the mold together and stop the resin from leaking out the sides. If you don't tie the ropes tight enough, the resin will spill out wherever there is a weak point. So this is a very important step to make sure that all your resin stays inside the mold. Once you've completely tied your mold together, you can now stand it up. At the very top of the mold there is a hole where we will be pouring the resin in. To cast the swords, I'm using a resin called Featherlight. This is a very lightweight resin which is great for making large props. Featherlight is also a really easy resin to work with. It has a 1:1 mixing ratio and it cures within 2 hours. So to create the cast, we're going to need some Featherlight part A and part B. We're going to need mixing sticks, mixing cups, and a measuring cup or a scale. When you open the tins of Featherlight, the mixture inside will look solid. You will need to take some mixing sticks and break up the solid pieces and mix them into the liquid which is at the bottom of the tin. Make sure you stir each tin very well and combine all the contents. Once the contents of the tin are completely mixed together, they should be creamy and very liquid. You can then measure out your resin in the measuring cups. As I mentioned earlier, Featherlight is a 1:1 mixing ratio, which means you need to mix equal parts of each. For my swords, I need to mix 1.3 liters of resin. So I'm mixing 650 milliliters of part 1. Then I'm going to pour in another 650 milliliters of part 2 and stir them together. Featherlight has about 8 minutes of pot life. This means you have 8 minutes to mix the resin and then pour it into the mold before it starts to set. Once the resin is mixed, I'm going to take my cup and slowly begin to pour it into the hole at the top of the mold. While we pour the resin in, we're also going to lightly tap the mold with a mallet and jiggle it to make sure that there are no air bubbles trapped inside the mold. Any air trapped inside the mold will leave big holes on the cast, so tapping the mold can help release those bubbles from inside. Once the resin is poured all the way to the top, we are then going to leave the mold and let it cure. This resin takes 2 hours to completely set. Once the resin is set, we can now move the mold back onto the table and untie the ropes and remove the boards. You can then slowly start to pull off the top layer of the mold to reveal the cast inside. Be careful when pulling off the mold so you don't rip and damage it in the process. And now you can see the cast you've made inside. You can carefully remove any excess resin from the edges of the mold and pull off the resin that forms the air chambers on the side of the hilt. Then you can slowly pull the cast from the other side of the mold to reveal the entire sword. There may be some small areas on the cast that need to be cleaned up where some resin may have leaked out. You can carefully break off any unwanted pieces of resin, or you can remove them with a blade. At the very top of the sword, we had a large pouring chamber where we had to put the resin in, so we have to remove this large piece of resin using a saw. Once your cast has been cleaned up, you'll have a really awesome lightweight sword, and you can make lots of these again and again using this technique. And now you guys know how to cast really lightweight, super cool props using a 2-part mold. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to see monthly videos like this, as well as get other awesome rewards, you can also subscribe to our Patreon, where we send out tons of tutorials every month.